Welcome back to another episode of the Gifted Performance Podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to like the video and subscribe for future content. For more information about our one-on-one coaching and other training or nutrition options, visit giftedperformance.com. Our newest feature, the Gifted Express, offers premium programming for bodybuilders, powerlifters, Olympic weightlifters, and lifestyle clients for only $30 a month. Enjoy the video, we'll see you on the next one, and as always, stay gifted. Welcome back, another episode of the GPP, Gifted Performance Podcast, giving you knowledge, practical takeaways to improve your own general physical preparedness. Everyone's got their coffee, we're thoroughly stimulated, and we're ready to get going. I don't want to waste any time. I don't want to do any introductions. I don't want to hear how your day was. I don't want to hear how your week is. I just want to watch this deadlift video. So our taste of the internet today is, do you guys see this video, this deadlift video that I have here that I put in the show notes for the day?
I saw it.
You saw it?
It's wacky.
So
Yeah.
how heavy is 502.5? Can someone math that out for me?
It's like 1,104 pounds, I think.
500 and what?
2.5 kilos.
500 and what?
502.5. Christoph Weir. Oh man. Weird.
1,105 pounds.
Okay.
I was off by
1105.
1 pound.
So it was like Eddie Hall for a while had the 1100 deadlift, right? And it was like, I had to die. Like parts of me are never going to come back. Like I left my soul to do it. And that was 11. That was what? That was 500 kilos. So 1,100 pounds. And then Thor, half Thor Bjornsson pulled what? 501? 500.5? I think it was like 1 kilo above. And now we've got Christoph Wiedersbicki. That's all I got, guys. That's the best I got.
I mean, his name is Christoph. Christoph with, like, you would never spell it like that.
Yeah. He threw in so many extra letters in there. All right. But he pulled 502.5 from the floor. So I think Thor's was like, I guess we could call it somewhat easy. What is this? Oh, I assume there's some like audio going on in the background that we can't hear. Someone's probably like prefacing the video. Sumo stance. So we know it doesn't count.
Cheating.
Straps.
He's cheating already.
Even worse. Double cheater.
He doesn't look like... He looks natty.
Here's the thing. When I see videos like this where
Have
someone's...
we started the podcast?
Yeah, we have, man. Why? What's up?
Oh. No, I thought you guys were just talking. I was reading something.
Oh. Hey, Paul's here too, guys. Everybody say hello. Paul, what do you want to say to the people?
Yeah. Nothing.
All right. So what I was going to say is when I see someone pulling a deadlift like this, like it's straps, like he's obviously using chalk. He's probably even using like a belt and sumo stance. The first thing that comes to my mind is like, I could probably do this. If I was using as many like tricks and little like cheating, little kind of sneaky ways to lift more weight, like I could probably do this. I haven't tried, but I have my suspicions.
He just looks like he's strong. Like, look, he's got that strong sort of like high top fade, like the Caucasian high top fade.
That's that like military high top fade.
1,107 pounds.
1107. All right. So maybe we're including the weight of the clips in there as well. All right. Let's watch the pull again. One more time. I just love how much the bar bends, these deadlift bars, before it even comes close to breaking the ground. Pulling it. We don't even have weights off the ground yet. And this is what the bar looks like. That makes it easier, right? That's like the premise of the deadlift bar, is that it makes it easier.
That's why they bend.
So it increases like the leverage.
If you're used, if you're used to pulling on
Can you
them.
explain to me why? I don't understand. Does it like put you in a better position for when the weights like actually have to break the floor?
Yeah, you already have it part of the distance up, you know. So, and also when you are able to bend the bar like that, you're wedging yourself into a stronger position too.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because most people are weaker off the floor.
Improving your leverages.
So you have more of a mechanical advantage as the bar bends more. Does that relationship exist infinitely? So if we were like, if I was deadlifting on like a spaghetti noodle bar and it like really fucking bent a lot, would I have even more advantage?
But that's why you see people hit bigger totals with like an elephant bar, right? Because it's longer, so it gets you can load it up heavier, and I think they use those in like some strongman type stuff, or I think I've seen what's his name? He was a client of mine for a minute.
Was
Jamal
yeah,
did a massive elephant bar deadlift, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah. So, just another. Honestly, Christoph, if you're watching, let's get real here, dog. The deadlift bar, the straps, the belt, the sumo stance, pull it all away, and we know that you're nothing without it. I actually think I saw this guy do like a conventional deadlift with no straps or anything like that, and I think he pulled like 800 pounds. And that's usually how it goes. Like, we had Shane Hunt on the podcast. Everyone's like, oh, like what a cheater, deadlifts 900 sumo, but like what can he actually do like conventional? And I think a couple days later he posted like a 675 for 10 conventional deadlift. I was like, oh, okay.
I think this is nothing short of absolutely impressive with straps, sumo. And me personally, there's some people who are built really well for sumo, and it's just nothing short of easier for them. But like sumo can fucking suck, and it's hard to do. It can be very hard to do with good technique, and it just straight up fucking hurts me. I feel like I'm about to split my fucking kidneys and intestines are about to come out of the crease next to my dick. Like,
is that Charlie?
You know it's Charlie. I hope he makes another appearance this episode and comes and cozies in behind.
I used to pull sumo back in the power building days, and that just always felt better for me. Like conventional, it never felt good. No matter how strong I got at it, it always felt like dog shit. But then for whatever reason, sumo just felt better, but the aches and pains were just in different places. It's like my adductors were just always fried, all the time.
I can randomly show up at the gym and pull like a decent sumo deadlift set. Like I posted on my Instagram, I think I pulled like 450 for a set of 12 sumo. And that was the first time I had sumo deadlifted in probably like 9 or 10 months. But the pain in my spine and my hips and my knees,
spinal,
and everything like below my belly button the next couple days was alarming.
So, I made a bad decision like back in that 24-hour fitness over there in Winter Park. Shout outs to those people who won't let you have a gym bag. But I pulled just randomly, like on the way out, I was like leaving, and Steve and all those knuckleheads were at the front, and they were deadlifting. He's like, you won't deadlift this. And I was dead cold. And I think I pulled like 495.
My man.
Hadn't sumoed in forever. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And they were like, do 500. I was like, nope.
Negative.
I'm out.
Negative.
But yeah, everything the next day I was like, you just try to sit down. You're like, why does my entire lower half just hurt?
So here's a greater question about kind of like what this deadlift means to the lifting community. Because it was like 500 kilos was impossible until it happened. And then it happened, and Eddie Hall came out and was like, I think he might have been in like a deadlift suit or like a single ply suit as well when he did it. And this guy is not in a suit. And then we see 501.
Who, Eddie?
I believe Eddie was wearing a...
No, he just had straps.
Okay, all right.
I'm almost certain he was shirtless too.
Love it. But Eddie came out and was like, it almost killed me. And then Thor pulls 501. This guy comes along and pulls 502.5. Are we seeing how high does it go? Because it was like, it took forever to break the 4-minute mile. And then Roger Bannister ran a sub 4-minute mile. And then like 26 or 27 people ran a sub 4-minute mile that year. Is this going to be like the new benchmark that we're seeing from people where like all of a sudden we're going to start seeing 500 kilo plus deadlifts pop up all over the place, or is this still going to be a pretty rare benchmark to hit? What do you guys think?
I think we'll see it more often because I think more people are being exposed to it. More people see that for some people it's attainable. More people are giving it a shot. So the population pool of people that are trying and chasing it are probably higher than they used to be. And then, I think that'll probably also discourage some people from chasing to the tops of the ranks when they are just like, wow, I qualified for nationals, but I have a 1,400 pound total, and all these top powerlifters, 180 something, have a 2,000 pound total.
Imagine having a 1,400 pound total and you see this guy pull 75%, 80% of your total on one lift. It's like, oh man, all he has to do is participate on squat and bench. What do you think?
I wonder
Jay?
what the rest of his lifts look like.
Like, I remember kids in college telling me that they qualified for nationals, and I'm like, that must sound real impressive to people that don't have any idea like what's going on here. Yeah. Like,
I think you brought up Roger Bannister, and Roger Bannister, which is interesting about him, and I think this could apply here as well. He broke that 4-minute mile record, but his training was just known as not being very good. He didn't understand that you don't have to run hard all the time to make progress at running fast. So he just ran hard all the time. And he did that. And then as soon as and I don't think he ever changed his training protocols, but then the rest of the field kind of pieced together, like, why don't we try just not running quite as hard? And that's when people started to really break his record even more. So this could apply here.
It's like they discovered RIR for running.
Yeah. They just realized. Yeah, they more or less realized like intensity was not the thing that's driving these adaptations. Like especially like you don't have to run hard all the time. Like you basically need to train quite a bit below what would be considered sort of a comfortable heart rate for the majority. Like it's just easy running for long distances is what kind of builds that base that will allow you to run faster for longer. And so he didn't understand that. He was just like, no, you just run really hard and that's just what you have to do. And then as soon as people realize that you didn't have to run quite as hard, that's when they start to break that record more often. And then that could also apply here. Like this guy might have the combination of the appropriate training protocols, genetics, the appropriate chemistry. He might have all the things going and people might start to pick up what he's doing. And then that might allow others to ascend, to his level or possibly even past it.
I want to bring up two things. Like one, I think that's interesting when you said the not train is hard, because I think a lot of times when you watch high level powerlifters train, you'll see like a lot of their sets, they might call it an RPE, and you look at it and you're like, that was like a 5 or 6. Like that was fast. And you look at a lot of their training and they're not hitting near maximal attempts frequently in training, right? Or they might hit one heavy single for the day or something, and most of their work is not. But I want to rewind back a little bit because you talked about seeing this stuff happen more often. And I remember Tom gave me an interesting perspective once. I can't remember why. I think I went up to him and I was like, oh man, did you see this guy broke the record at this weight class in non-tested powerlifting? And I think Tom said something like, oh, who cares? Like, that's why people aren't into non-tested powerlifting anymore, because totals don't last. Like they get broken all the time, just one after another.
When you said,
so I think that's like interesting, thinking about people reaching a new benchmark and consistently trying to break it or hit new places.
Jay, you have an endurance running or an endurance sport kind of background. Do you think that like cooking the gains like low and slow is like more of an endurance thing? Like it's more well accepted in the endurance world that's like what you have to do now, and is taking a little bit longer to like work its way into the bodybuilding space? Because like when I look at endurance stuff now, it's like most of these high level long distance runners, cross country skiers, they're doing 95% of their volume, like zone 2. They're not pushing really high. It's like, is that even a viable strategy in a sport like powerlifting?
I think that eventually, I think the difference between the two is that the sort of the demonstration of strength, eventually you would have to practice that at some point in time, like within your program. Eventually you would have to do something heavy, or else you would never see just that experience itself. Where running, it's like, it's the same look, like it kind of looks the same. It is basically the same. Like running, the difference between running fast and running slow is almost purely cardiovascular, where lifting something light and lifting something heavy, there's a lot of psychology along with that. Like there's a lot of neural drive, because does that make any sense at all?
No,
like if you're lifting something light, the way you switch on is completely different than when you lift something heavy. And I feel like that's the thing that should probably needs to be practiced more regularly when it comes to just, single lift events, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting question, right? Because the fibers that we're trying to train, right, they are not activated very well, it seems, at lower intensities, right?
How low is low
so
intensity,
then I'm just mean like equating intensity in terms of the same way as you might with low intensity running, something that you could just do for a long time, very low fatigue, right? So, I mean, 20-30% of 1 hour, or even less, I don't know, right? I mean, it's kind of like at a certain point, doing push-ups is no longer effective for hypertrophy,
Cali Muscle disagrees.
I can't help but wonder.
But,
oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, man, I'm losing my train of thought. Go ahead. I lost my train of thought.
I was going to say, like, a lot of how you determine intensity in running, or most endurance sports, it's all perception of effort. Like, it's literally your like, how does it feel? Where training adaptate, like, we're looking more at numbers. I guess not all the time. Some people do train for strength by feel, more or less. What's that guy's name?
Doug Miller. Fuck that guy.
Now I can't think. Like most of his training protocols, he's an older power lifter. I can't think of his name. Most of his training does involve. No, most of his training does involve
Jim Wendler.
He's no, not that old. Like
does
my
me yelling
age
names help?
No, it doesn't. And I can see his face, but he's like in that Greg Knuckles crowd. I think he's maybe a little bit older than that, but he trains a lot by his feel. Like he determines his training sessions by how he's feeling on that individual day.
Mike Toucher.
But he's yeah, exactly.
I did it on my third try.
Did. You nailed it. That's crazy. But when I think about endurance, like some of my training for endurance stuff does involve sort of hard numbers, especially if it's on the bike or something like that. It's like a hard number, like you're doing 200 watts for this amount of time, where some of it's just like, how do you feel? Like how, because you can't really, I'm looking at my watch for heart rate, but sometimes I'm just going by how I feel, and I wanted to keep it as low an effort as possible, where I feel like powerlifting, at times it just has to get really hard, and it's probably more of that than it is the latter, where it isn't quite as hard.
Paul, I like when you said it's like they discovered RIR for running. So I like that a lot.
I regained my thoughts a little bit. But, just for example, we're seeing a little bit more data showing that people are experiencing hypertrophy a bit further from failure than we once thought. And, it's very easy to hear about how a certain amount of fatigue may be desirable to hit high threshold motor units and activate the fibers that aren't active in lower intensity, lower effort work, and to hear about effective reps and just think more really hard reps is better, right? Or getting as many effective reps as possible is better. And the literature does demonstrate that there's more to it than effective reps. We've seen also literature showing groups that with more effective reps don't get any better hypertrophy for the most part often. And so, just from my own experience, that a very large bulk, like been lifting for 13 years, probably a good 7 of those years. My own training was very, very much more conservative, further than 5 reps from failure for like probably a good bit of it, with a lot of it also existing in the 3 to 5 range, and very, very little of it approaching the 0 to 1 RIR range. And even now, my training now is a little more intense, but during that whole time period of doing more conservative training, that's where I received the majority of my growth. And there are a lot of arguments we can create against that, right? Like now I'm 13 years in, I'm just not going to grow as much, but and I've seen it with clients where I try to push them to work harder for a long time and they just don't. And I'm like, you're not hitting the RIR targets. You're being very conservative, too conservative. And then, after 6 months, a year later, I'm like, holy shit, you still grew. You still made great progress. You know what I mean? And so I think people, it may never go away just because of the nature of the activity. People want to work hard. They're hungry for it. And some people even have neuroses and anxiety about it. It's just an activity that's centered around, gut busting reps and shit like that.
Before we move on to our question from the crowd, I want to say something that'll just make people mad because it's what I do for fun in my free time. So good coaches understand that long-term success over a lifting career is best cooked low and slow. And I was thinking about this the other day. It's like people who advocate for training to failure or gut busting intensity all the time, those are people who enjoy like microwaving their meat. They're like, did you know that you can put a chicken breast in the microwave and it'll be ready to eat in 2 minutes? They're like, I need my meat and I need it right now.
I've said that to you before.
And it's like, yes, you can eat a microwave chicken breast, but it's going to taste so much more succulent and good if you throw it in like a marinade for 24 hours. And then maybe you throw it in the slow cooker after that for some more time. It's like the best things in life, they take time to develop. So stop microwaving a hot dog and feeding it to me like it's a delicacy. I don't want your microwaved hot dog. That's my soapbox. Dom? Dom muted himself. Again.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
I said I don't know anything about strength sports, so I stay away from it.
But you are strong.
I think the original question was about bodybuilding, though.
Was it? I honestly don't even remember what the actual
That fellow
question
looks
was.
like a bodybuilder.
He does. He was quite yacked.
I just know you mentioned bodybuilding at first.
Maybe. You could be right. But if we are, actually, this question's not even about bodybuilding. That was going to be a segue, but it didn't work. But so, Jordan, we're going to answer your question. So at Jordan Danette? Yes. Oh, no, Dom. Oh, no.
OBS taking over again.
Oh, no. He has OBS.
You can't change devices while recording.
He has OBS ghosts in his computer, so we lost Dom. Try leaving and coming back. Maybe that'll work.
You can still hear him, though.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, there it is.
All right, well, I asked the question. Well, I guess we probably shouldn't ask the question while he's gone. Nah, we'll ask it again when he comes back. Jordan Danette asks, what is your general daily sugar intake recommended? It says general a lot in it. For general population lifestyle clients. Dom, the question is general sugar recommendations, sugar intake recommendations for lifestyle clients. How do you phrase it to them? Do you put a limit on it? What's the takeaway there?
Well, I support meal plans, so I don't really give free range with sugar. So if I had to tell somebody, I would say no more than like 30% of your carbs a day.
30% of your carbs. So if you have someone on 300 grams of carbs, that's around 90 grams of sugar a day. 200 grams of carbs would be like 60 grams of sugar a day. Do you care the source?
I mean, I don't want them eating Sour Patch Kids all day.
So, like, would your recommendation change with like Sour Patch versus like apples? Like, if they were
an apple,
yeah. So, like, would you bump your sugar recommendation up? You could say, all right,
no. I would keep it the same.
Okay. So, anyone who does sign up with Dom, when he gives you that meal plan recommendation, you see the carbs, the sugar recommendation. Just remember, Sour Patch, apples, it doesn't matter.
But I want you to eat a fucking apple.
Eat the goddamn apple. Eat some vitamins. Paul, Jay, any sugar recommendation?
I mean, I think Fitness Pal sets it up like that. Fitness Pal sets 30? It up a cool way. They do.
I can't remember what organization it was, but I believe the last recommendation I saw was around 10% of calories. Yeah, of calories. But like if a client were to ask me that, which they have, I tell them like, hey, this is the last recommendation I remember looking at, for general health, probably 10%, not, or just above or under is probably fine. But I just tell them, hey, like I want the majority of your food, let's say 80 to 90%, and it can fluctuate, just to be from nutrient-dense foods. Getting a good amount of fiber is all right, or will help a bit with that too, in terms of keeping the junk food a bit lower. But yeah, I mean, just the majority of your foods to come from good nutrient-dense whole foods. And if they have some days where the sugar is very high, just to not even sweat it, and just don't go out of their way to make most of their carbs Fruity Pebbles, with like what I've also had some clients do before, and to try to eat like an adult, because and another thing I'll tell them, I'm like, hey, if you're fairly active, your body composition's good, you're not sitting on your butt all day, decent step count training, all of that stuff, and your surplus isn't excessive, sugar is the last thing that you have to worry about in terms of your health.
Yeah, I agree. Like Fitness Pal, with me at 400 grams of carbs, it has my sugar set at 110.
110. So yeah, it's right around 30%, a little bit below. It's like 26, like 27, 28%.
Yeah.
What percentage of that is calories?
My cals.
So 440.
So I'm at 320. I'm at 3,300 cals.
So that's like 480.
So that's 440.
480-ish of the 3,300.
440 divided by 32, whatever.
So it's about 13%.
Yeah, so right around that 10%.
Yeah, so I mean that's not far from 10% of total calories.
I would say probably in that 10 to 15% range. Now, I will say that I have had clients who consume much higher than that, up to 50% of their carbs from sugar, because they really like berries and apples and oranges, and they a lot of that stuff, and their results are just fine. Their blood work is solid. The only real issue that I've seen with this is that when the carbs start to drop and calories as a whole start to drop, and we have that high sugar count, some individuals have reported increased levels of hunger on the higher sugar intakes. And as they switch over to more like starchy carbohydrates that are lower on the sugar end, they feel a little bit more full throughout the day, but those have just been anecdotal cases. So I don't give people like an upper end that they should or shouldn't hit.
I mean, I eat a lot of fruit a day. Yeah. I've always been like that, and I don't think I've ever seen a lack of progress because of it. No. I don't think if I replaced that fruit with like rice, it would have made a difference. If anything, it's probably more beneficial because of all the micronutrients I'm getting while I'm eating the fruit.
I want to add to that too, and in some circumstances, switching it to rice could have a negative impact, right? Like somebody's dieting, and it depends on the fruit. There are fruits that are not advantageous for that, but the volume of blueberries that you need to eat, to equal the carbs in rice, way more filling, at least in the short term, right?
I need
that's a really good point.
Jake, at this point right here, I need you to
There.
piece in the clip from the movie This Is 40, where he's at the doctor and they're talking about you have to balance your good fruits with your bad fruits. So you have your good fruits over here and you have your bad fruits over here. I need you to find that clip and put that in here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No, but Paul made a good point. Like, if you're hungry and then you switch to something like that, your volume of food just like got cut in half almost.
Yeah.
So it could probably make it even worse.
Because like if we look at total carbs from a half cup of rice and switch that over to like strawberries. Dom, I know you like strawberries for all your people.
It's like a lot of strawberries.
The volume difference there is massive.
Yeah, like 200 grams. 200 grams of strawberry or blueberry is huge. And, to Dom's point, and I definitely don't want somebody to watch this and think I'm demonizing other forms of sugar or refined sugar either. Probably not super great on a restricted diet from a hunger aspect. But, to Dom's point, you're getting a lot of good shit with fruit, like vitamins, minerals, water content, it's still, those carbs are still used like any other form of glucose, antioxidants. So did I say fiber? I don't know.
Fiber in there.
But anyways, you just get a lot
you get a lot of
things.
stuff. And I mean, 200 grams of strawberries. Let me see. 200 grams of strawberries has how much sugar?
Strawberries,
because 200 grams of strawberries is what's it called? Is 15 grams of carbs.
Yeah.
So for 200 grams,
I thought it was more than that, but it's a lot. Yeah.
So
I mean, low amount.
200 grams of strawberries off the USDA, 16 grams of carbs, 4 grams of fiber, and 10 grams of sugar.
And
that's almost a half pound of strawberries.
Yeah.
Jay, when you make a list of good fruits and bad fruits, which do you sort in each column?
I feel like if you're eating fruits, you're doing the right thing. I mean, as far as sugar intake, I get the majority of my recommendations from the place that I should, which is the
back of a cereal
CDC,
box,
where you should definitely get all of your appropriate and factual information from. So they say 10%. So that's what I follow, 10% of your total caloric intake coming from sugars. But that's always been on a bit of a sliding scale with me, because it's like, if you like eating fruit, then who am I to say, like, don't eat nature's candy? That's what they call it, right? Nature's candy? So. Like, you should be able to eat that, enjoy that. It's probably, I say a lot of dumb stuff, but one of the dumbest things I think I say is that, it came from the earth, so it probably is a better option as opposed to like Sour Patch Kids. Like, I've never seen Sour Patch Kids, naturally occurring Sour Patch. I wish that was a thing, because they're delicious, but I feel like our caveman physiology probably is better built for breaking down fruit as opposed to Sour Patch Kids.
Nature's candy.
I guess it depends on what you mean by better for breaking down. But, like, when clients ask this question, I'm like, oh man, I bet you thought you were just going to get a number. And I'm like, we got to really get into this. I'm going to have to educate you, and I hope you're ready to get in this, because you almost have to give them like this whole physiology lesson on like, hey man, like, no matter what it goes in your body turns it into glucose. Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have to educate them on why some choices are better than others.
I think
the only fruits I tell people to stay away from are like dates.
Yeah.
Just a few that are like super low volume, don't get much calories or get a lot of calories out of it, and a ton of fructose out of it. Because we still should only stay underneath like a 50-gram fructose consumption a day, which is a lot. But if you're somebody eating dates all day long, you could reach that pretty fast.
Dried fruits.
I don't
probably
know.
Also a bad choice.
Maybe there's something. Well, it depends on the circumstance too, because I'll have people that, and I'm sure we all do, and we've recommended. I know Dom's recommended this. We have a shared client where Dom does his nutrition, and I think it was you. It might have been me, but I think it was you that recommended dried mango.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I do dried foods for guys that can't eat a lot.
Oh,
because it's dried, so it's super small, and there's a bunch of calories behind it. And then a lot of those are sweetened on top of. They put sugar on top of them. So that's like a way, if you needed to fit more calories in, you could go the dried fruit route.
Dried fruit route.
And I just think there's some and somebody can fact check me on this, but I don't think fructose itself is inherently bad. I think we've taken that assumption from studies that were designed to show a negative effect from fructose. And fructose can be awful under the wrong circumstances in the very high amounts. But once again, physically active, calories in check, you're probably good even with fructose, especially if it's coming from fruits with all those other things in mixed meals, The
fructose study designs are funny.
I tried.
Huh?
The fructose, like the study designs.
What'd you say?
They're almost like funny because don't they like give people like 150, 200 grams of fructose in a day? And they're like, hey, this is bad.
Well, I believe most of them are in rodents. And when you do these rodent studies, you're trying to discover mechanisms and stuff. And you basically give them enough of something until something bad happens because you want something bad to happen.
You're like, whoa, something bad happened, guys.
Right?
We got a problem here.
It's like when they study cancer in rats, they make sure the rats have a genetic mutation that predisposes them to cancer. Like
I think like experientially, I remember at the beginning of the whole IIFYM thing, and we were all surviving off of like cereals and Pop-Tarts and shit like that. Where your sugar intake was just through the roof. I remember distinctly just feeling bad. And a lot of that time, granted, I was like in contest prep, so I would feel bad, but it was just a different kind of bad. Like it was like this weird kind of real spiky energy and then like no energy. It was just very strange. And I remember having conversations with my sister-in-law, and she's a pediatrician. I was trying to talk to her about if it fits your macros, like trying to, drop some knowledge on her. And she was like, so what about fruits? And I'm like, I don't really worry about it. I don't really need to eat fruits. I just have to make sure that I hit these macros. And she was like, I don't think that's right. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure that's right.
Well, this guy Lane Norton told me, and he's a doctor, so what the fuck do you know, lady?
What do you know? Yeah.
All right.
So eat your fruits.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say there is that local coach who, and I've known him for a really long time, who doesn't like his clients to eat fruits. I think we had passed that along at some point in time.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great take.
I was carving up for my show on strawberries.
Oh, you're still here?
I think
he is.
I ate fruit every single day during my prep.
I love fruit.
Oh yeah.
So in my rapid backloading experiments, I was talking with Cliff, and Cliff was just telling me to be careful when you are carving up on a lot of fruit or fruit-based products, just because of that fructose glucose mix and how it kind of interacts in, I believe it's the liver, and how you don't get as good of a like glycogen response from something like fruit, just because of that 50-50 fructose glucose blend, or whatever the specific.
Well, not all fruit
is.
Not all fruit is 50-50.
Yeah, no, I'm saying whatever the specific fruit actually is.
Fucking idiot.
God damn it. I'm leaving the podcast.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that wraps up
it
this
has
episode.
to be turned into glucose. No, but It has to be turned into glucose at the liver before it can be used in the rest of the body. And I would only assume that if there was liver glycogen to replace, it might go there first.
It would, yeah.
That would be my assumption. I don't know. I know people say that it preferentially refills liver glycogen. But I think people hear that and they mistake it to think that it's only good for liver glycogen.
I bit my lip.
But there's something else. Another consideration for the fructose, though, in terms of activity is you can actually absorb and get more glucose into the bloodstream if you do glucose and fructose together, opposed to just glucose.
So there was
because of the transporters.
Chris Bearcat, the one that kind of put me onto this, was I forget what he calls it, something transportable carbohydrates or something like that, where maybe the day of the show he would have his athletes have like a sweet potato, some chocolate of some sort, and some raisins or something like that. It was like different trying to like maximize different transport vessels of carbohydrates. I forgot what it's called. I'm probably butchering it.
Yeah, I think that's what Paul was trying to get at.
I forget what it's called too. I forget what it's called too, but I know it's a thing. That's why Gatorade uses both.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and nobody puts more into performance-based carbohydrate use than fucking Gatorade.
No one knows sugar water like Gatorade.
You got like whole teams of people at universities and shit
Obsessing over it. All right, Jordan, hopefully we answered your question there. As always, you got a little bit of the answer, and then you got a whole lot of tangent after that. And if that's not what you wanted, maybe you should have asked your question somewhere else, because that's what you get from us. And now, our topic of the day. Our topic of the day is one that has made its rounds around social media quite a bit recently. More people talking about it than I've probably ever seen. And that is the topic of hormonal birth control, specifically oral contraceptives in women, and the effect on all that is kind of health, fitness, muscle hypertrophy, fat loss, hormone optimization in our field. So our good friends over at Stronger by Science, Greg, please come on the podcast. We want to talk about exercise science study design, please. Like, come on, man. I told you we could play one-on-one basketball as soon as your arm is better. I think your arm is better. We can do a podcast and we can play basketball if we both play our cards right. Just come on the podcast. Over at Stronger by Science, they came out with an article around the subject, and it says, do oral contraceptives affect your gains? So I want to throw the question to our camera is off currently, don't know if he knows it or not, Dominic Kuza. And because Dom has recently posted a good bit and spoken a good bit about kind of the negatives of oral contraceptives, birth control in women, in a fat loss and hormone optimization. So I want to kind of let him get his 2 cents in on what he's been talking about, so that we can then circle back to what is actually a different topic, and that is strength and muscle gains. Dom, take us away.
So, obviously I post a lot about birth control. I don't mean to demonize it, but I've seen anecdotally way more uphill battle kind of scenarios for women trying to, lose weight, lose fat, and optimize that kind of stuff when they are on oral contraceptives, especially hormonal ones. So kind of the camp that I've seen with blood work and things like that, with extended oral contraceptive use, we see a lot of issues with like mineral absorption. So we could see reduction in thyroid function because of the lack of iron and the lack of iodine that is absorbed because of birth control. There are some good studies that show that with the iron uptake being influenced by oral contraceptives. And then 2, we know that oral contraceptives they're suppressing sex hormones, because just like a guy on testosterone, it suppresses your natural testosterone from being created. If a woman's on a progestin based or an estrogen based oral contraceptive, essentially they're putting that hormone in their body, thus suppressing their own production of it. And that kind of throws off a lot of the ratios of things, because when we look at women, estrogen progesterone ratios are super important. And that's where we get into where oral contraceptives cause like a lot of estrogen dominance. And it might not be because of estrogen coming up really high. It could be the opposite of progesterone gets so low, absolutely borderline nothing, that we have estrogen dominance by low progesterone. And then that causes other issues like a big cortisol response in the adrenal glands, because the body needs to function off of something. And a lot of these women that I work with end up telling me they feel one thing, and it's they feel wired all the time, but they feel tired at the same time. And a lot of that comes from that constant adrenal drive that is pumping out cortisol for them to function all day long. And when we have that kind of storm, obviously we see like reverse T3 climbs up, all systemic stress influences all of that. And then it just makes it a lot more difficult for that person to see progress when it comes to weight loss. As far as like strength training and things go, I for the women I do program training for it that are on birth control, I personally haven't seen like a reduction in strength or something like that. So I think when I talk about it more, it's more geared towards, you know, getting them extremely lean for competitions, and then also having them just, you know, lose weight overall. As far as like weight, muscle building and things go, the only time I've ever ran into that is when someone's been on for 10 plus years and the suppression is so intense that it's tanked their testosterone at this point, and now their testosterone is almost non-existent. That's when I've seen like difficulty gaining muscle. But as far as like strength goes, I haven't really seen that in my practice.
I have a question for you, Dom.
I have questions too.
And by no means is this to necessarily like discredit you or anything, but it's just something, when you tell me these things, it's just a question that pops up. Like I wonder, what do you think that potentially that maybe some of these individuals, like they're struggling with losing weight, they are stressed out about it, you know, their body image, stuff like that, maybe fluid fluctuations, all of those things. And, you know, then the conversation comes up and you guys talk about potentially, hey, I think that this could be a solution. Let's maybe try weaning off the birth control, coming off the birth control, and see how that impacts things. And then you give them a bit of background on why it might be helpful, you know, that maybe they buy into it. Or I don't want to use that word, like are now a little more emotionally invested into it, and potentially they feel like they've found a solution that may work, may help them out reach their goal better, lower their stress, and maybe some of the positive things happen just from that belief and decrease in stress.
I mean, I can see where your train of thought is with that, definitely, because like that's kind of like what that placebo effect is. Like when somebody finds a solution to something, they just feel better, they start functioning better. But like I wouldn't have that conversation with somebody until I got all their blood work tested, and then.
And I do want to say, and I don't want to obviously you have a lot of anecdotes and a lot of blood work to you know, say this. So I definitely want to make sure listeners know I'm not trying to discredit that.
No, and that's why I could see for sure like where you're coming from, like just everything about the weight loss journey, all that is causing a bunch of stress. You give them this, you know, potential solution that they really believe in, that's going to reduce overall stress on top of, you know, the birth control coming out, everything, all that. So I'm sure they do see more results just based off of that mentality switch too. I could agree with that completely.
Okay.
But I do think, just based on like hard blood work, I don't think frustration of diet progress and weight progress is powerful enough to actually influence sex hormones.
Yeah, and I definitely think there's something there too, just because not that I'm an expert on birth control, like know very small tidbits here or there, but I know like there are different generations of birth control, and the evidence for some of them having negative impacts on body composition are worse in some than others, or performance even. And I don't know if maybe that's something you've sort of seen. I don't know how deep you look into the various types that your clients have had, but I'm sure you've had clients you're like, yeah, there's no issue. Like you're on birth control and everything's going
Yeah,
well. There's no reason to
I
mess
had
with it.
that,
And
and
then,
I do have that.
yeah,
I coach some women competitors that are on birth control still to this day. We don't mess with it because blood work looks good. They're responding well. There's no need to remove it at that point. I don't think you should remove it until it's actually causing an issue. I don't think you should just not be
yeah,
on it just to not be on it. I think if it's causing an issue, it's causing that uphill battle fight. That's when you have that conversation, because I don't think I'm not against using it. I'm against anything that's gonna hurt our progress.
for sure, for sure.
Jason, did you have something to add?
I think Paul brought up some really good points, and that was basically what my line of question was going to be, because I always think about, especially within the context of a contest prep, just how inconsistent results typically are with women. With men, I think I kind of look at it like our physiology is like pretty stupid. Like we really don't, like as an organism, a man, like we really don't do, like we're not as complicated as women from a number, even from obviously from an emotional standpoint, we're just not as complicated as women. And that's not me making a derogatory statement. I'm just saying that women just have more of an emotional spectrum in comparison to men. But I'm just, I just think about, in this conversation, just how complicated a female's physiology is and how difficult it is to get them lean, because their physiology is basically fighting that process far harder than a man's, just because they're built to do something different, and a lot of that revolves around body fat and that need for body fat. And so this was kind of an interesting read, just because I wonder how that need for body fat and taking the oral contraceptives, why does it vary from woman to woman? Like those are all the questions that come, like why isn't it consistent from female to female? Like those are all the weird questions I come up with. Like is it an environmental thing? Like what is it? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I have more questions than anything else.
And I think that's something we're never going to be able to pinpoint, just because of all the variables involved in that. But like recently I had a client who I coached in the past, and they had like a bad experience with birth control when it came to like losing fat, all those things. And when they finally got off of it, we kind of put them on a protocol to just reset their hormones and just get things naturally back working. They saw a lot of progress. So whatever, fast forward 2 years now, they come back to me and they want to get back on some sort of birth control. That's where I recommend like the copper IUD, where it's non-hormonal, it's very effective. They can just, and they're still getting their contraceptive, but because I know of their past, hormonal birth control's not in the wheelhouse for her to go in. But I'm still all for it. Go ahead. If you want to use it, that's fine. But just keep in mind that last time it hurt you a lot. Maybe take this non-hormonal route this time, and it might be a bit more beneficial for you.
I had a thought that Jason just, I've never thought about this before, but for some reason when Jason said contest prep, it just popped in my head. And I was thinking about control, like how we like to have a lot of control. And then I thought about just in my experience from various females that I've dated, and now I'm married, how erratic some females can be with their dosing of birth control. In terms of a lot of times skip it for 3 days, and then they're like, well, the doctor said if I ever miss days, just take all the doses I missed at one time. right? And how frequently that happens to where they go 3 or 4 days without this hormone and then they take this giant dose and then they feel awful. Like my wife has done that once. She's taken like 3 or 4 days of birth control at one time.
Jesus.
And emotionally, I picked up some things, and I think it might be related to that, right? I don't know, just a thought that I don't think a lot of us consider when we coach women taking birth control.
Yeah, I just feel like it's a I don't know, because there's even studies in regards to I think is menses the term, the cessation of menstruation, like how inconsistent that is. Like some women it seems to be body weight consistent, some women it's body fat consistent, some women it's a training thing. It's like this wide spectrum of all these things that affect female physiology, and nobody really knows. Like Dom was saying, like, who knows? It just blows my mind that women are that. There's so many variables involved with women, where here we are, I'm just trying to make a sandwich later on, I barely have that figured out.
No, I think it's very true. So
I know Ryan's ready to move on.
No, I'm ready to fucking say what I gotta say. You guys been talking too long. I got shit to say here. So this was the kind of the takeaway, the big thing that I pulled out of this article as a whole. Definitely recommend reading the entire, because if you're someone who's not super familiar with kind of birth control and, the interactions there and how it works and the effect it can have, this is going to be a good article that can kind of serve as like an intro in there. Would also recommend going and joining Lyle McDonald's Facebook group, Body Recomposition, on Facebook, and then just search birth control. He has a write-up of every generation of birth control that was absolutely phenomenal. I still have the screenshots somewhere on one of my old phones, and I go back and I read those from time to time. But here's the kind of the big piece that I took out of this. Greg says, he was able to find 10 total papers, 8 distinct studies on the topic of oral contraceptives, strength, lean mass, and hypertrophy outcomes. So no discussion of fat loss, hormone optimization, no discussion of long-term effect. There's a lot of women out there who are 24, 25, 27 years old, and they've been on birth control since they were 15. So not a lot of looking at kind of the effect over 10, 12, 15 years. But in terms of the outcomes that they were looking at here, strength, performance, and, strength outcomes, hypertrophy, and lean body mass accrual, there was no real consistent, notable impact of oral contraceptive on that. All of that was summed up here nicely in Table 5, summary of results. I won't just sit here and make you guys read through here. But some of these studies, had the classic errors of exercise, or not classic errors, the classic limitations, I should say, of exercise science. 8-week study duration, untrained subjects, not controlling for how long they had been on birth control, not correcting for dose. Some of them mixed generations. They were looking at second and third generation at the same time. But the overall consensus from the literature that exists that measures these outcomes seems to show that oral contraceptive has no effect on building muscle or strength, which I think is it's kind of a breath of fresh air, and it's kind of like an exhale for the women that are reluctant to get off or to stop taking oral contraceptive. Maybe they're just at a point in their life where they still want to stay on the pill. Neither here nor there. And there's been kind of this big push on social media of just like, birth control bad. It's like, well, yes, in the scope of, long-term hormone optimization, maybe, fat loss, maybe, cortisol, things like that, maybe. But if we're looking at strength and gaining muscle, it seems like this is kind of like a win or something that would be in the good column for oral contraceptive in a wave of kind of like bad news. So that's kind of how I read through this. I don't know if you guys had any additional points to add there.
And if I'm not mistaken, because I read through the study very quickly, just skimmed it as well as this one. In this particular study with this generation of birth control, they found a potential argument for an ergogenic or anabolic effect in birth control, right?
Well, there are some that have here. It says it up in this top note up here. So it says, I don't know if you can read this up here. Fuck, I can't highlight it either.
Well, like some progestins can activate like the
Yeah, so it
androgen
says
receptor.
also split users apart. So this study split users apart based on the androgenicity of the progestins in the birth control. The lean body mass increased by 2.5% with low androgenicity birth control and only 0.3% with medium/high androgenicity. So in this study itself, it looks like the low group actually gained a greater amount of lean body mass, which is an interesting find.
Yeah, well, I mean the actual like not this table, but the actual study, because this reviewed like
Yes.
Largely.
You're talking about the
a
first
different
study I sent
yeah.
out, right?
I think in that one, the birth control users had like certain, man, it's hard to say. I don't want to say they definitely had more hypertrophy, but certain aspects of, muscle, things that are involved in muscle remodeling and anabolism were greater in the oral contraceptive using group.
In this specific one, the one that you're talking about, I think that might be the top one on the graph.
Yeah.
What was the? I think that was the one that was oral contraceptive use impairs muscle gains in young women. That was the title of that one, right? That's this Lee 2009 study up top.
No. It wasn't impairs. It was molecular markers of skeletal muscle hypertrophy following 10 weeks of resistance.
Oh, the second one.
Training.
This
in oral
Oxfeld
contraceptive
2020
use.
study.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the second one right here. 10 weeks. All right. That wraps us up our topic of the day. Gentlemen, I have one piece of good news to bring us home. So I have been listening to the audiobook for Shoe Dog. Have you guys listened to that one? The guy who owns Nike, Knight. The guy who started Nike. It's his autobiography.
I've heard of it.
Never listened to it. Heard of it? I had heard of it for a long time, and I wanted to listen to it. In it, he was talking about how they first kind of started getting in with Oregon, like sports, and putting Nikes on the feet of athletes at Oregon. And I had to rewind it because I thought I heard incorrectly. And he said that they were working with the basketball coach and the football coach at Nike at the time. The football coach's name was Dick Enron. And then he said, he just kind of tried to sneak it in there. He said, and we were also working with the basketball coach whose name was Dick Harder. And I said, hold on a second. This gentleman's name is what now? And so I rewinded it and he said, the men's basketball coach, Dick Harder. And I said, wow, okay, well, now I need to do some research and I need to find if it's possible that someone actually has the name Dick Harder. And I learned a lot about him. I learned about Richard Alvin Harder, American basketball coach, worked in both the NBA and the NCAA. So that was my good news, was that there's a gentleman, I think he's still alive. Yeah. Oh no, he died in 2012. Rest in peace to Dick Harder. You don't have
I think
to
we
have
just
any,
leave on that note.
you don't have to have any comment on that. You can just
Shout outs, Charlie. Yeah, we're out. Let's go.
Guys, listen, we'll see you on the next episode. In the meantime, in between times, and if you do want to get some Dick Harder in your life, we'll see you on the next episode of the Gifted Performance Podcast. Until then, stay gifted, and we love you. Bye.
Bye.